it's your girl from Philly. Welcome to another episode of Handcrafted Wines, where we make great wine from home the fun and easy way. Before we get started, please remember to like, share, subscribe, and click that notification bell so you don't miss any episodes.
If I'm stuck in a cloud, drifting away to get out.
In today's episode, I'm going to be making a wine that's very near and dear to my heart, and that's butterfly pea flower and lemon wine. And I'll explain to you why this wine is so special to me. When my daughter and her husband announced they were going to become parents, they decided for their baby shower that the color theme was going to be a very pretty light purple because they were having a girl. My granddaughter is now 2 years old, but of course I was over the moon when I was becoming a grandmother for the very first time. And once you become a winemaker, you want to make a wine that commemorates everything. Birthdays, holidays, when someone gets married, and of course, my granddaughter coming into the world. And I wanted to find a wine that would match the colors that they chose for their shower. So I searched around and I was thinking grape wine, not really the shade of purple I'm looking for. Blueberry wine, really, really deep and dark and more of a full-bodied red wine. And then I came across a segment on YouTube where I saw butterfly pea flower and how it changed when it was introduced to lemon juice. So I said, well, let me try that. And I made a small batch and it came out so pretty. Then we made 5 gallons of it and we used it as a favor for the shower. So everybody got a 375 milliliter bottle of wine. I'll actually show you guys a bottle of that wine when we get to bottling this wine, so you'll see what it looked like. But the ingredients of this wine are 1 cup of dried butterfly pea flowers, the zest and the juice of 5 lemons, 2.5 full cups of sugar. We're going to use the entire thing. I'm not even going to test to see if it's perfect. And then our usual players. Since we have a lot of lemon in this recipe, we won't need our acid blend, but we will be using our pectic enzyme, the dynamic duos, which is our yeast nutrient and our yeast energizer, our powdered tannin, and today we're going to be using Red Star Premier Rouge as our yeast. Okay, let's get started. I just ran this fermenter through the dishwasher because I did a lot of racking today. But I am going to spritz it with some Star San just to get started. And the very first thing that I'm going to do is dissolve our sugar in some hot water. This is such a pretty wine, but it really is a simple wine to make. Let me get my long spoon. We're going to add our sugar into our fermenting vessel. And like I said, right off the bat, we're going to use that full 2.5 cups of sugar. And that's because neither lemon or butterfly pea flower have a lot of sugar in it. So I know we're going to use this full amount today. And let's just stir until it's completely translucent. It's getting there. I feel a lot of granules on the bottom of the fermenter, but it looks like it's getting clear. I mentioned in another video how when you dissolve sugar, it's actually not clear. It is a light shade of something. And the last bag of sugar that I used, it came out to be a kind of light yellow color. And it looks like this brand of sugar is turning out to be that same kind of pale golden color. Okay, so all our sugar has been dissolved. It's completely clear. Well, there's a few crystals kind of dancing around in there, but I won't worry about that. It's not that many. Now we're going to get our straining bag, and because we're only working with the peels, some juice, and some flower petals, we really don't need a very big straining bag. This one doesn't even, well, let me try to not this. I won't even bother. But this one doesn't really even close around the whole side of the vessel. So I'm going to use my smaller spoon, and I'm going to add the I dropped some flowers. These I'll pick up. When I drop fruit, I won't add that. I'm going to add the flowers into our vessel. And the very first thing I want you to see is the color that we get from just the butterfly pea flower. Now I actually have a batch of it on the shelf, and what I did was use a little bit more flour than I should, so I have like a really pretty indigo on that batch, but I'm going to leave it that color. The one just fell inside, but I kind of don't want it to stay in there. Now, alternately, you can just steep the butterfly pea flower and just add the actual tea that it created into your batch. I actually like to keep the flowers in through the whole fermentation process. Though you get most of the color in the first, I guess, 10 minutes of steeping it. We're almost there. Now, dried flowers, of course, never have the same scent that they have when they're fresh, but this is just a really light floral scent. It's not strong at all. It's pretty though. I dropped another flower. I don't know if the camera can pick up what they look like. I read once that Native Americans use this flower to make dye with. Well, they use several vibrantly colored flowers to make dye for clothing. Okay, so all right, we have all of our pea flower tea in the vessel. Now I'm going to let it hit the water. I'll use a large spoon for that. Just so that you can see the color that we get from this tea. You know, two heads are better than one. And it wasn't until my partner said to me, you know, you can change the angle of your camera so that some of the table shows too. I didn't even think about it. But I think I like this a lot better. Okay, so if we see the color that we have this very, very pretty blue colored tea. It's a really nice shade of blue. I'm going to add a little bit more hot water to this vessel, just so we extract a little bit more color before we make the magic happen. So I was totally awed by this process when I saw it online. There we go. So it looks a little bit more richer. You can see how vibrant this blue is. Now what happens when we add, I'm going to first add the lemon zest. And of course, the lemon zest has been peeled without any of the pith. So it's just the yellow lemon zest. And I'm going to use the zest of all 5 lemons because we want a very strong lemon flavor in this wine. Now the lemon zest hasn't made any changes yet. It's the lemon juice that we're looking for that change to be made with. Now I have the juice of all 5 lemons came out to be, this is 4 ounces and an additional 2. So we have 6 ounces of lemon juice. I'm going to see if that first 2 ounces makes a difference, and it's starting to. So we're moving from that vibrant blue to, I don't know if you can see it now, but this very, very pretty purple. And I don't know, we're using a lot of lemon juice. This tea has the ability to change to a bright magenta shade. So I'll see whether or not we end up with this purple color, this is what the color was for the shower, which was really, really pretty. But I'm going to try the other 4 ounces and see what shade we get. If we get a vibrant magenta or if we get that pretty purple. So it's getting a little bit more pinkish. It's really pretty. Fun with flowers. So if you can see that color, it's like a purple with a little magenta tinge to it. So that's probably the color that we're going to actually end up with. So that's all of the solid ingredients that we're going to put in here. So I can go ahead and close this bag. Me and my knot making. There we go. Need some of that bag to come through for it to knot up right. There we go. And I think I'll tie some of this around the bottom too. Such a lovely color. Now I'm going to add some room temperature water to fill up the vessel. And if you wanted more fruit flavor with your wine, I really wanted lemon to be the predominant flavor in this wine, but you could add apple juice, you could add white grape juice, any juice that doesn't have a lot of color to it would work really well with this as well. So let's see what we get once we fill up our vessel. Oh, I think my lid is a little loose. Yeah, it was. There we go. And I can fill this all the way up because it's not heavy on fruit. So I'm not concerned with it overflowing in the airlock. This color is so pretty. I hope the camera picks up how pretty that is. That's a gorgeous purple. So this wasn't really far off from the shade that we had. It was a little bit more blue purple for the baby shower, but I'm really pleased with this shade. And in this batch, the predominant flavor is, of course, going to be lemon. But you can make it anything you want it to be. The butterfly pea flower itself doesn't give off a lot of flavor. It gives off a lot of color and aroma. Okay, so we're going to add our usual players. We don't need any acid blend, but we will be using pectic enzyme so that we can extract as much of that flavor from that lemon zest as we possibly can. It won't do much for the flowers. The flowers have done what they're going to do. I just like to keep them in there. Okay, now we're going to use our dynamic duo, our yeast nutrient and our yeast energizer. Of course, it's 1 teaspoon of yeast nutrient and a half a teaspoon of yeast energizer. Everything in the ingredients get about a half a teaspoon except the yeast nutrient. That's the only thing that's 1 teaspoon. Okay. Now, of course, tannin's going to change the color a little, but once it's finished fermenting, we'll get back to this very bright, vibrant purple. So I want us to remember this shade before we add our tannin. Where's my short spoon? There we go. It's covered with leaves. Here we go. And I'm going to add some hot water. There's a flower inside the tannin. Take that out. Now, I could have gone without adding tannin to this batch, but of course, when there is no tannin, you're missing one of the 5 qualities of a good wine, and that's astringency. So we want to make sure that there's some tannin there. It's dissolving okay today. Usually gives me a hard time. It's always that little bit on the tip of the spoon. So back to my granddaughter, the light of my life. She's 2 years old now. She was born in January, and I named the wine after the baby. My granddaughter's name is Japanese. So when I labeled the wine for the baby shower, I labeled it with her name, which is Kinsukuroi. Her name is, it's a Japanese art form in which they take broken pottery and mend it with gold. So her name means mended with gold, or made more beautiful, more precious by gold. And I think that the philosophy of Kintsukuroi, or Kintsugi, which is what the art form is that the trials and tribulations that we go through, the things that scar us in life, actually end up making us more unique and more beautiful as a result. My daughter and her husband came up with that name. I'm not so deep, but I love the name. It took some time for me to get used to it, but by the time she was born, I'd practiced it enough to be able to look at her and say, "You are Kintsukuroi." She is my absolute world now. Okay, so the tannin made it slightly darker, but it didn't change the color in any way. We know it's going to lighten up a little bit more as it continues to ferment. Okay. And like I said, this was a very, very simple wine to put together. It didn't have a lot of moving parts. I'm going to add a little bit more water. I can add the warm water. It's fine. Before we add our yeast. In this batch, I'll be able to get a full 5 bottles of wine, 750 milliliter bottles of wine, because the flowers and the lemon zest are barely taking up any space at all. Now, if I find that it's lacking a little character after when I rack it the first time and I taste it, I can either do one of 2 things. Add a fruit juice, and if I did add a fruit juice, it would probably be white grape juice or an apple juice. Or I can just add additional lemon juice to it. So I'll find out. We'll do it together where it is after the very first racking. Now we're going to add our yeast. Oh, I added the yeast without checking the gravity, but that's okay. We can still check it with the yeast inside. I'm not going to be making changes, so no matter what, whatever the reading is that's what we'll go with. Okay, so we want to get our beaker or our cylinder and my turkey baster. Right now it's like a really pale ink purple. When I was young, there was a purple, was indigo. Indigo was the color of ink. I don't know if they make pen ink that shade of indigo any longer. Or it's kind of like a heather purple right now. But I'm pretty sure we're going to get back our vibrancy. Okay, that's 250 milliliters. And let's see what our gravity reading is. So what surprises me about this is I am going to have to add more sugar. So this is actually too low for wine. I thought the 2.5 cups would be fine, but I'm going to have to add another half cup. So I'll be back, guys. Okay, so I have one more half cup of sugar that I'm going to be adding. That might have been, yeah, that was a whole cup. So we're just going to add a half a cup. That's interesting. It barely had any gravity of its own, so all of our gravity is going to come from our sugar. Okay, the sugar dissolved. A little more. And I'm going to add our sample back so that we get a full reading. Ooh, it's pretty high up there. But again, that's okay because there's not going to be any blowing out from this batch. There's no pectin from fruit to contend with. I think if I need to get more flavor in this batch, I'm going to go ahead with lemon juice. I think I want to stay consistent with that flavor. There is a lemon juice wine that's been nicknamed Skeeter Pea. I don't know why. I don't know who, decided that mosquito pea is yellow, but this has a flavor very similar to Skeeter Pea wine. Except that it has that floral quality from the butterfly pea flower. Okay, let's see where we are now. Okay, so it's still going to be a low ABV wine, even though we're using Premier Rouge as our yeast. I don't think I'm going to go any further than this, but let's take a look at what our reading is. No, let me look at it one more time and make sure I saw exactly where it landed. Okay, so it landed at 1.080, and my hydrometer tells me that we're going to be just at about 11% ABV, but I do want to check the calculator just to make sure that that sounds right. And the site that I go to is brewersfriend.com. They have a very, very handy calculator there. So our reading was 1.080. I actually have to add more sugar, guys. That gives us a 9.19% ABV, which is, oh, you know what? That's not right because the final gravity should be 0.0.99. 0.099. 1.099. The final gravity reading should be, oh, nope. It should be 0.099. There we go. So update or 0.99. Update it. It still would be 11.81. I am going to go ahead with that last bit of sugar just because, in all fairness, it's not, to me, it's not a great wine unless it's at least 12% ABV. I'm really surprised at how much sugar I have to add for this batch. So we start off with 2.5 cups of sugar and we're adding a full cup. So this has 3.5 cups of sugar in it. Wow. But I guess it kind of makes sense because the lemon has very little sugar, and of course the flowers have none. I have to be really careful now. I don't want to spill any of this. I'm going to take a look once it's time to add the lid and the airlock as to whether or not the airlock has room to breathe. If it doesn't, I'll take some of this off. The last thing you want is when it starts to ferment that it just starts spouting out of the airlock. That's defeating the whole purpose. I'm really surprised at how much sugar we needed. Now, when I made this for the baby shower, I made a 5-gallon batch, and I believe I used 12 pounds of sugar in a 5-gallon batch. Yeah, I used 12 pounds. And I did back sweeten it when it was done, but I just back sweetened it with sugar. And I use a lot of lemons in that batch. Alternately, what you could use if you don't want to press your own lemon juice is you could use the reconstituted lemon juice that comes in the bottle. But whenever you use that product, it does have preservatives in it. You want to leave it, you want to open it and leave the cap on very lightly so that air can escape from it, so that those preservatives can get a chance to air out of your product. Or you can pour it into a pitcher, cover it with a dish towel, and let it aerate that way too. Within 24 hours, those preservatives will dissipate. Okay, we're going to try one more time. I really thought this was going to be a simple wine without having to make a whole lot of changes, but I was wrong. What I am very satisfied with is the color. It's really what I was going for. Yeah, I think I will stick to keeping the lemon flavor and only the lemon flavor. Another really good lemon wine is blueberry lemon wine, where you would just use 2 cups of frozen blueberries with your batch. Okay, pour a little bit back. And my trusty dusty hydrometer. Let's try one more time, guys. Okay, so it's where I know that by looking at it, it would be at 12% ABV, but I'm going to do the actual reading. The reading now is 1.090. And if we go into the calculator, 1.090, update that, gives us 13.13% alcohol by volume. That makes more sense to me. I'm satisfied with that. And I think I'm not going to fill this all the way. I'm going to stop there just to get an idea of where our airlock is. And this last amount I can put into a Ziploc bag and put it into the freezer. So if it's time to back sweeten it, I can always put that there. And it will also help it if it gets stuck in fermenting. But I don't believe with this yeast that we would have a problem with the stuck fermentation. Okay, so we're going to add our lid with got a little bit of butterfly pea flour on that. We're going to add our lid with our drilled hole in our grommet. Actually, I can add a little bit more back to the batch. It's a lot more space than I thought. Okay. Yeah, that's not a lot to put in reserve. I'll put that in a little Ziploc bag and that'll be good to go. Okay, so we're going to add Star Sand to our airlock to the maximum fill line. And I find this to be a good sipping wine. It will go with like light foods like cheeses or very light sandwiches, like if you were having a tea, something like that. But it doesn't really pair very well with heavy food, just because the predominant flavor is just lemon. So, I mean, it might go with a fish. I haven't even considered, pairing it with fish. Maybe like a halibut or a flounder, something very, very light. All right, that's in a good space. All right, so I'm satisfied where we are now. So that's it for this batch of butterfly, pea flower, and lemon wine. Again, I'll be stirring this on a daily basis for the next 7 days. In about 15 days, I will rack it to secondary. It'll be a very easy racking. 100% of this basically is going to the secondary vessel. And in 3 months, I'll taste it to see where it's going. If we need to add additional lemon juice at that time, I'll do it at the 3 month mark. In 6 months, it will be wine. In 1 year, it will be great wine. And that's it. So I want to thank you for joining me again at Handcrafted Wines. Please remember again to like, share, subscribe, click the notification bell, tell your friends. Look down in my descriptions and purchase some of your own products. I'll have the butterfly pea flower in the description for this episode, and try making your own wine. And if you are making your own wine, please comment and let me know how it's going. This is a very fun hobby, but it's a lot more fun with friends. Again, thank you and have a great day. Bye-bye, guys.